Today, we're in the Badlands and headed up to the top of North Dakota.
Hi, I'm Scott Marthaler. Welcome to another episode of Rooftops of America. Today, we're in the town of Amidon and just a few miles away from the rooftop of the Peace Garden State.
Located in the southwestern part of the state, White Butte is on the edge of the North Dakota Badlands, a region of land that lies along the Little Missouri River. It stretches 190 miles long from north to south and varies in width from 6 to 20 miles. The peak gets its name from the white bentonite rock and clay it is made of.
When you visit out here, you'll find that the Badlands of North Dakota are one of the scenic wonders of the Great Plains. This is a breathtaking but rugged and harsh landscape. But that wasn't always the case. Millions of years ago, this was a hot, humid, swampy marshland, similar to modern-day Florida. It was a home of dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures.
For paleontologists, the Badlands are a treasure trove for fossils dating all the way back to the Cretaceous period. The layered, sedimentary rock makes it ideal for fossil preservation.
In the time since humans have been living in this area, this place has earned a reputation that is both severe and punishing. The Lakota Sioux called it Makushika, meaning where the land breaks. And 18th century French traders wrote home about it, saying it was a bad land to travel. And in 1864, General Alfred Sully, before leading an expedition through it, described it as hell with the fires burned out. All three are quite adequate in describing the unforgiving terrain.
The most widely known Badland formations are in Canada and the United States, but they are a geographical feature that can be found around the globe.
To understand how this landscape came to be, there are two main geological forces to consider: deposition and erosion. The first is the accumulation of mineral materials, silts, sands, clays. And here that process took millions of years, starting when this was an ancient sea, and then continuing with the ash and sediment from the creation, and later erosion of the Rocky Mountains to the west and the Black Hills to the south.
The sediment would form in layers and solidify into the sandstone, siltstone, and mudstone that can be seen in the rocks here. The volcanic ash would form the bentonite clay that gives some of the buttes in the region their white appearance. The lignite coal beds prevalent in the region would also take shape.
About 3.5 million years ago, the other major geological force, erosion, started its work on the landscape. Wind and water would start to strip away the layers that had built up. But the biggest factor for how this place was shaped actually occurred further to the north.
Great continental ice sheets ground their way repeatedly to the south, covering much of Canada and parts of the United States, though they left southwestern North Dakota relatively unscathed. Over the years, the advance and retreat of the glaciers would block rivers that once flowed north and drained into the Hudson Bay, forcing them to change direction and head east to drain in the Mississippi River. The new path was shorter and steeper, increasing the speed of the Little Missouri River, allowing it to cut through the landscape.
The rerouting of the Little Missouri River would drastically change this entire region, and it's responsible for much of the broken topography you're going to find here. Erosion still is a major factor even today. Wind, ever present, is stripping away the sediment, and rainfall, while on average only 15 inches a year, when it does fall, is very heavy and erosive.
Rainfall runs down the slopes, forming gullies and other formations. Some soaks into the clay soils and rocks, adding weight, causing instability and eventual collapse.
What you get is a landscape that is striking to behold, and if it appears otherworldly and alien, well, you wouldn't be the first to notice that. Our 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt, felt the same way.
The Badlands grade all the way from those that are almost rolling in character, to those that are so fantastically broken in form, and so bizarre in color as to seem hardly properly belong to this earth.
Theodore Roosevelt was in his mid-20s when he first came to western North Dakota in 1883 to hunt bison, and he quickly fell in love with the area. The following year, after the sudden deaths of his mother and his wife on the same day, he returned and threw himself wholeheartedly into ranching. He wanted to prove his mettle and get a taste of the American frontier before it vanished.
For Roosevelt, this place would be transformative and have a significant impact on the remainder of his life. It was in the Badlands of North Dakota where he stated, "The romance of my life began."
For Roosevelt, the Badlands became the cornerstone of his conservation ethic. His experiences here would mold and shape his views and would yield a lasting legacy.
We have become great because of the lavish use of our resources. But the time has come to inquire seriously what will happen when our forests are gone, when the coal, the iron, the oil, and the gas are exhausted, when the soils have still further impoverished and washed into the streams, polluting the rivers, denuding the fields, and obstructing navigation.
Roosevelt would turn his beliefs into action, and conservation became a primary concern. In 1901, upon becoming president, he put his new authority to use.
During his time in office, Roosevelt would create the U.S. Forest Service, establish 150 national forests, 51 federal bird reserves, 4 national game preserves, 5 national parks, and 18 national monuments through the 1906 American Antiquities Act. The Roosevelt presidency would go on to protect approximately 230 million acres of public land.
Roosevelt's efforts and actions would kickstart a growing conservation movement in the USA, with the goal to protect our resources and our lands for future generations.
While it took almost 3 decades after his death, in 1947, President Harry S. Truman signed the law establishing Theodore Roosevelt National Memorial Park. Over 30 years later, President Jimmy Carter would sign the law giving it national park status and ensuring the continued preservation of the North Dakota Badlands.
Now it's time to take a closer look at White Butte.
The Highpoint is located almost due south of the town of Amidon and is about an 8.5-mile drive to the trailhead. It is in a remote part of the state and can be confusing to find. Detailed directions can be found in the episode description.
This high point has a bit of a different name than all the rest. It's not a mountain or hill, but a butte. So what exactly is a butte? The word itself is of French origin, meaning small hill, and it's used fairly extensively out here in the American West.
The formation falls under the general category of table landforms, along with plateaus, terraces, tuyas, and others. It is most similar to the Mesa Formation, and depending on the region, the two names have at times been used interchangeably.
So, how do you differentiate a butte from the others, particularly a mesa? Well, an easy rule of thumb is a butte is taller than it is wide, and a mesa is wider than it is tall. But, like any rules, there's exceptions to it.
The buttes in this area were formed through fire, water, and wind. Lightning and prairie fires could ignite the lignite coal beds, which in some cases can burn for years. The heat from the fires baked the sedimentary rocks into a natural brick-like substance called clinker, or as it's known in these parts, scoria. It is from these fires where the red color you see comes from, produced by the oxidation of the iron in the coal. The result is a hardened, erosion-resistant rock.
The wind and the water does the rest, stripping away the unburned soils and stones and leaving behind the more resistant structure.
When you arrive, you can park at the trailhead, heed the signs, and don't go further down the road. White Butte is on private property, and the owners, the Dennis family, requested a donation to access their land. In the latter part of 2018, the The Dennis family, in partnership with the Highpointers Foundation, improved both access and the site, signing a 99-year land easement, adding signage for the trail, and installing a new Iron Ranger, replacing the old mailbox for donations.
To get to the top of White Butte, it's a hike down this trail behind me. It's about 1.2 miles long. Now in the summer, you need to be prepared to watch out for rattlesnakes. Also, keep in mind this is private property, so leave no trace. Let's go check it out.
The first part of the hike is on a relatively flat tractor trail. Stay to the right of the fence as you head towards the butte. When you reach the gate, pass through it and continue. Remember to close it behind you. If it is wet, you'll want to watch your footing. The bentonite clay can be incredibly slippery. Once you reach the top of the ridge, continue following the trail to the summit.
And here we are on the top of White Butte, the rooftop of North Dakota. Coming in at 3,506 feet, makes this the 30th highest state high point in the USA. I'm Scott Marthaler. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Rooftops of America. I'll see you soon.